right, everyone. Well, it's 4 o'clock Central Time, so we'll get started. My name is Joshua Dilday. I'm the Education Chair for the AAST Associate Membership, and I've got one of our Vice Chairs, our Vice Chair of Webinars, Dr. Alex Sweat, who's also on our Education Committee. And we are excited to bring you one of our favorite events of the year from the AAST Associate Committee, and that's this fellowship panel on how to apply to surgical critical care and trauma fellowships, what every applicant needs to know. Now, if you were on last year, you may see some familiar faces, and that's not an oversight. That's on purpose because of how well this seminar is usually well regarded. So we welcome you now to, I believe, our third annual SCCPDS and AAST Associate Member Joint Venture on how to apply the surgical critical care fellowships and how to navigate that sometimes confusing process. We've got a wonderful lineup with you today. We've got some phenomenal speakers from leaders in the field, and we're going to go over a few things. One, how to find our fit, what exactly program is the best for each applicant, and how do you navigate that frustrating and sometimes confusing process. We'll go over some differences in benefits in 1 year versus 2-year fellowships. Do I need to do a 2-year? Are there differences between 1 year and 2 year, and how do I make that decision? And then we'll go over some unusual situations. Sometimes the process doesn't always end up the way we want. What happens if we don't match? What happens if we decide late in our trauma career? And we'll ask some questions, and then we'll find out from applicants who have done it in real time and some current fellows and can give their perspective on exactly what helped them successfully match into their dream programs. So thank you once again for joining. Without further ado, Dr. Sweat's going to lead us through some introductions, and we will get going with this webinar.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Dilday. We have a really phenomenal panel of speakers assembled for you all today. And as Josh mentioned, some of these folks have been with us for multiple years. I want to correct Josh, though. I think this is at least our 4th time presenting this, because I know that Dr. Spain has joined us for a number of years. He's a professor of surgery at Stanford. He's also a program director of the general surgery residency. He's a former president of the AAST. He is a proud graduate of Wayne State University, where he did his training at Robert Wood Johnson in New Jersey, and then I believe was the first Yankee to be deemed eligible for a fellowship down there in Louisville. In addition, Dr. Annie Moore is an assistant professor of surgery at the University of New Mexico. She is an APD for the general surgery residency and an APD for their surgical critical care fellowship. She went to medical school in Colorado, trained as a resident at the University of New Mexico, and is a part of the Penn Mafia. Dr. Purvi Patel is an associate professor of surgery at Loyola University Chicago School of Medicine. She is the program director of their surgical critical care fellowship. She did her medical school at Rush, as well as her residency at Rush and the Stroger Hospital of Cook County, and then fellowship at UNLV. Dr. Paula Ferrata is a professor of surgery at Inova Fairfax and University of Virginia. She is the program director of their surgical critical care fellowship. She is from Columbia, where she did her medical school at Universidad de Valle, and then residency at Beth Israel Deaconess in Boston, followed by 2 fellowships, one at the University of Pittsburgh and one at the University of Maryland Shock Trauma Center. As for our trainees who are joining us, Caitlin Braschi is one of my residents. I'm very proud of her. She's a chief resident here at Harbor UCLA. She's a proud graduate of Mount Sinai School of Medicine, current chief resident at Harbor here in Los Angeles, and next year we'll be heading to USC/LA General for a 2-year fellowship. And then Dr. Samin Golestani is a current AAST fellow at the Medical College of Wisconsin with Dr. Dilday. She is a graduate of the University of Arizona College of Medicine at Tucson. She did her residency in Texas at UT Austin and is currently a first of 2 years of fellowship at MCW. Without further ado, I'd like to turn over the talk to Dr. David Spain.
Well, thank you. Let's see here. Hold on a second. I thought I had this figured out. Share screen. There we go. All right. Well, if you were on last year, these slides may look a little familiar. That's okay. So we'll talk a little bit. I'm just going to give a few introductory remarks because I think the rest of the panel will have a lot more practical things. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of trying to find your fit. So the good news is there are a lot of programs out there. So if you look at the data, Fred Lucetti, and sort of Bill Chaffee founded the Surgical Critical Care Program Director Society like in 2005. So when we started then, there was about 50 people a year going into surgical critical care. And now you can see now there's about 280 to 300 people going into it. And so the number of positions is just increased. The number of programs is increased. And the good news is the number of applicants has increased. Pretty much now about 1 out of every 6 general surgery residency graduates is going into surgical critical care fellowships. And if you look at the numbers, basically there's about 1 applicant for every position, or slightly less than that. So there's a few more positions than there are applicants, and about 95% of positions fill. So lots of opportunities out there. There's been this, rapid increase over the last couple of years. Like I say, like 1 out of every 6 general surgery graduates now is going into surgical critical care. And, we kind of wondered why, and a bunch of us got together. We all had a different answer to the question. So we said, like, let's just ask the people involved. And so this is a few years ago, and we had different ideas. I actually honestly thought it was going to be a lot of like control and lifestyle issues were going to be important. But actually the most important things amongst people that were currently in fellowship, like in 2019, right, where they wanted to develop a broad skill set. They enjoyed doing complex problem solving, and they liked caring for the sickest patients in the hospital. And to me, this was like very gratifying, fulfilling data to see, because this is all the reasons that I went into trauma and surgical critical care like 30 years ago, right? They still hold true today. So this was great information that, world's changed, things are different, but the motivations are still primarily the same. So like I said, there are lots of programs out there. As Josh mentioned, there's 1-year fellowships, there's 2-year fellowships. Some of the 2-year fellowships are, formal acute care surgery fellowships that are AAST approved. There's some old-fashioned, just pure trauma fellowships out there. There's some places have a variable 2nd year. So you can kind of structure it to what you want. You can do research. You can maybe spend some more time learning administration stuff if your goal is to be a trauma medical director someday. And there's some where you can just, straight up work and practice your clinical skills and teaching. So there's any number of different kind of programs out there. There's different, hospital types out there. Most critical care fellowships are at academic medical centers. But, some are at county hospitals, some are urban, some are more suburban. I guess all sorts of different models out there. So, you can find all sorts of different things. Like you can find all sorts of different programs. You really have to sit down and figure out, like, what is it that I need to get better at? What is the 1 or 2 skill sets that I want to improve on? And then you have to sort of, like I say, you want to push yourself a little bit, right? So you have to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. So we don't know what the future holds, and, you don't want to be paralyzed. So you got to force yourself to grow. And so don't get complacent. Don't take the easy road, right? You want to like get in new situations that will force you to grow, and then you'll be, ready to take on any new situations and thrive in sort of any practice model, location, or situation. So don't take the easy road. So, ask yourself, like, what are the things I need? Like, where can I improve? Where can I get better? And how will this program push me to learn those new things? Maybe it's patient care. Maybe it's how to lead a team. Maybe it's teaching, research. Maybe, you feel strong about that. And what you really want is a program that can give you mentorship and give you new connections, right? But, take a good look at like who you are, and don't take the easy path. Like, find that program that's going to push you to strengthen those areas where you think you could do better. And, like I say, every single fellowship out there is different. There's no 2 are alike. So I don't know that we'll have answers for you today, but we can discuss like what are the questions you should be asking, what's the data you should be trying to get, and then you're going to have to answer that question yourself, right? Like, what's the right fellowship for me? I will say you'll hear a lot of talk out there. People say, we only hire people who've done 2-year fellowships. I don't believe it, right? Like, you hire anybody that's good, right? So, if you trained at high volume, trauma dominant general surgery training program, and you have great experience, clinical experience, do you really need to do a 2-year fellowship? Probably not, right? Like, so if you trained at USC, LA County, or Emory, or UT Southwestern, do you really need to do a 2-year fellowship? You may not, right? You may just need a 1-year fellowship to sort of put some finishing school touches on your critical care and your team leading abilities. And if you're strong in research already, 1-year fellowship may be fine for you. And if you trained at a hospital that, doesn't have as much operative trauma, and maybe you didn't have research time as a resident and you want to build on those skills, then a 2-year fellowship might be great for you. I've always said you should do an extra year of training if it allows you to have the career you want, right? So adding 1 year onto your training is like retiring a year early, right? So if you add an extra year onto your training and you want to have the same earning potential in your entire career, then you got to retire at 68 instead of 67. So if that extra year is going to make a big impact on your career path, then do it. And if it's not, then why not finish a year early and get at it? So that's kind of my thoughts on the situation. So you got to really do a self-assessment. And so again, there's no such thing as a dream or perfect fellowship, but you could find a great one that will help your career. So I love this Bruce Lee quote, right? He says, you should be like water, shapeless, formless. You pour it into a cup, it becomes a cup. You pour it into a bottle, it becomes a bottle. So water can drip and water can crash, but you should be like water. So be flexible is my advice. Thanks.
Well, that was phenomenal. I think we look forward to that talk every year, sir. And I think that kind of hits the nail on the head. And I think it's a perfect segue. So one, if you're having questions on the participants, feel free to drop in the question and answer box. We'll answer them at the end, but don't wait until the end to have questions. So I already have a couple questions that I can't wait to ask based on that alone, but we'll save it towards the end. And so now with that, Dr. Spain talked about 1 year versus 2 years. So we might as well segue into the 1 year versus 2 year and kind of what those specific examples are. So Dr. Moore and Dr. Patel, we'd love to hear that perspective specifically from each side of the camp. And if Dr. Moore, if you want to kick us off and talk about the 2 year program specifically from the AAST side and what that sponsorship means, we'd love to hear from you.
All right, hopefully y'all are seeing my slides okay. Thanks so much for the opportunity to come talk to so many people about this process. I know it can be so confusing, and I hope that over the next hour, folks are better understanding what is the best fit for them. So you always want to know who's talking to you and who's giving you advice. So I am certainly biased in that I'm a graduate of a 2-year fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania. I also have biases in that I'm an APD for both a 1-year and a 2-year fellowship. So I very much recognize the validity and legitimacy of both training pathways. But here I am here to talk about the 2-year training pathway. So you really have to think about where you are now. Right now, you're a general surgery chief resident. Many of you are or 4th-year residents, many in the audience, and think about what you want to become, which is a fully fledged acute care surgeon. And the path between the two of these individuals looks very different for everybody. It can be very convoluted, and it looks incredibly different depending on where you start and where you want to end up. So when I meet with trainees and look at advising them in this process, you really have to start with the end game, which is who do you want to be? What is your ultimate goal? One of the best pieces of advice that I was ever given is that when you're interviewing for fellowship, you're really interviewing for your ultimate job. So really think about the long game. So who do you want to be? Where do you want to work? Do you want to work in an academic setting? Do you want to work in a community setting? Are you going to work in a hybrid setting? And what type of training program does my ideal job offer? What kind of practice do you want to have? Do you want to be at a busy knife and gun level 1 trauma center, or is EGS more your thing? Or are you a true intensivist? Do you want to be practicing everything? Do you want to have an elective practice? And really, what additional interests do you have? Are you interested in scholarly activity? Are you interested in trauma systems or trauma program leadership? Do you have interest in pre-hospital care or disaster management? Are you interested in public health or injury prevention? Or are you interested in surgical education? There's certainly a lot of different phenotypes of acute care surgeons. And then think hard about who are you now? And this is where self-reflection is so incredibly important. So what kind of residency are you in? Are you in an academic setting, a community setting, or a hybrid setting? What has your complex trauma experience been like? Do you live and breathe complex polytrauma patients and knife and gun club every single day? Or do you do your trauma rotations at an outside institution and are really more of a visitor? What is your experience with blunt trauma and penetrating trauma been? What's your comfort level independently caring for surgical emergencies? In high-level complex cases, are you serving as a role of a spectator or first assist, or are you fully responsible and left alone in the operating room to independently manage patients? And then has your training been compromised by something? Certainly the pandemic has affected case volume for many trainees who are coming out of residency over the past couple years. You may have been affected by the development of a new fellowship program during the time of your residency, or did you have something personal that happened? Either family emergencies, maternity, paternity leaves, or any other extended leaves that, that may have affected your training. And then finally, what's your research background? Are you coming into fellowship having done 2 years of research during general surgery? Are you coming in with an advanced degree like a PhD? Or are you kind of a novice at research and want to look at something that might improve your scholarly activity skills? So the 2-year AAST ACS fellowship is really about bridging the gap between where are you now and where do you want to be. The first part of the gap that it helps bridge is the clinical care gap. So over 2 years, you're going to have more exposure to complex trauma and complex EGS patients, and you're going to become much more comfortable caring for those patients that you may not have had a lot of exposure to in residency, or that you want to have more exposure to even though you've had a lot. It will also expose you to different patient populations, a different hospital type or different location, suburban versus rural versus inner city. And then a lot of people come to the 2-year programs looking to enhance specific skill sets. I hear a lot from applicants who are looking to really enhance their comfort with thoracic and vascular parts of acute care surgery. And then there are also subtracks that are both in practice now, including a burn subtrack through the AAST 2-year fellowships, a robotics track, and then the ped surgery subtrack is near completion and should be ready for rollout soon. Next, the other gap that the 2-year fellowship helps bridge is the career development gap. Certainly research is a big part of the 2-year fellowship in many institutions. Lots of programs offer both good nuts and bolts training and scholarly activity, as well as fantastic mentorship and people who can really help launch your research career and serve as mentors, not just during your fellowship, but long term. You'll also get more experience with leadership roles. One thing that was really big for me was involvement in professional societies, not something that I'd had a ton of exposure to as a resident and something that I really learned a lot during my fellowship. And then finding and honing your niche. Over the 2 years, you really get exposed to these various different niches in acute care surgery and figuring out what's the best for you. Are you an injury prevention person, a trauma systems person, surgical education? Are you interested in PI or QI? And then potentially developing some areas of clinical expertise. Some people develop some expertise in chest wall reconstruction, transfusion. There are a variety of different areas that you can kind of take a deeper dive into in a clinical expertise realm. And then finally, there are these intangibles. The 2-year process is a more natural transition to independent practice. Oftentimes as a 2nd-year fellow, depending on the structure of the fellowship, you have time where you're functioning in an attending role. But I'm stealing this analogy from my husband, who is a chief resident in internal medicine, and this is what he told his interns, not exactly the surgical world. So he told them on day 1, he said, show up, this is like bumper bowling. I'm the bumpers. You just have to throw the ball and I will keep you rolling down the lane. I think that's a lot of what the 2-year fellowship is like, is really some more transition to independence, but with some structured support around being able to be practicing independently. There are some good reasons not to do 2 years. If you are coming from a program like Dr. Spain mentioned, where you have very strong trauma and EGS background during your general surgery residency, you probably don't need to do a 2-year fellowship. If you know that you're going to go practice in a community setting, the majority of people practicing in community settings have done a 1-year fellowship. I realize a part of what draws people to acute care surgery is a small degree of masochism, but that shouldn't be your only motivation for doing a 2-year fellowship, is because you just have to do the hardest path to everything. You should not do a 2-year fellowship with the idea that this is the only path to academia. There are many different paths to academia, and certainly not everybody going into academics has done a 2-year fellowship. Certainly, if you want to practice at an institution that only offers a 2-year fellowship, they may very likely be more interested in hiring 2-year fellows, but certainly a 1-year fellowship is still a viable option. There is the reality of lost income. An additional year in training certainly contributes significantly to a financial deficit. And then finally, you may have family constraints. If you have to move across the country to do fellowship away from other family members, and that really is going to be too much of a hardship on you, it may not be worth it. So ultimately, this really comes down to knowing yourself. Not everybody needs to do a 2-year fellowship. So you really need to know who you are right now and think very honestly and carefully about where you are right now and what your goals are. The perks of the 2-year fellowship are multiple, but really the 3 categories that they fall into are enhanced clinical care exposure, enhanced career development, and those intangibles allowing a more natural transition to practice.
Thank you. That was phenomenal. It's wonderful we get the opportunity to hear from you being a fellowship director for both a 1-year and a 2-year. And so now segue Dr. Patel, speaking now on the 1-year perspective. Can you shed some insight on how that may differ or is similar to the expertise Dr. Moore gave us?
Okay, let's see if I can figure out my screen sharing. It should be, and I have to display it because I think I swapped it. Okay, hopefully you guys are seeing the main screen. Great. So I'm here to talk about a 1-year fellowship. I am a program director for a 1-year fellowship, but I did attend a AAST ACS 2-year fellowship, one of the first ones in Las Vegas. So some people may call me a traitor, but I think it ended up working out best because I kind of can talk on both sides, similar to Dr. Moore. So focusing on a 1-year surgical critical care fellowship, I don't think I'm going to probably say anything really new compared to what Dr. Spain and Dr. Moore have already talked about. But there is a certain group of people that this may be your niche, and you may not need that 2nd year. So everyone, regardless if you're doing a 1 or a 2-year, essentially if you're doing the AAST program, and most tracks include a surgical critical care year, which is governed by the ACGME. And the focus is critical, ill, and injured patients. It is not an operative year. And you're going to be working on multidisciplinary teams. You're going to be working on gaining leadership skills, collaborating with others, and really taking care of these really sick patients. So I just wanted to really clarify what the ACGME requires. So all programs that have a 1-year fellowship, although we all have unique aspects, there are certain guidelines that we all have to follow. And one of that is there should be no dedicated research rotations if you're doing a 1-year fellowship. So if research is something you really want to work on, maybe a 1 year is not going to be your cup of tea. However, there's always opportunities to get involved in projects during that 1 year, but it is often harder to make it happen. Next would be you have to have 8 months in your ICU, and 5 of those months are going to be where your program director is the director. So probably most of you are going to spend most of your time in the SICU. You're going to then take electives, but some of these electives are actually just other surgical ICU rotations or CV, transplant, trauma, which may also kind of broaden your evaluation of a critically sick patient. You can spend 2 months in the cardiac and medical ICUs, peds ICUs, and you can spend 2 months on operative services, but that's it. And your goal, again, is critical care and not the OR. So I just really want to emphasize that. So you want to check off those lists. Now, every program, as Dr. Spain mentioned, is unique and different strengths, different experiences. You have to find the one that fits with what your career interests are, that helps take you to that next step, find a job, and fills in the gap of your own knowledge and abilities. So again, as Dr. Spain mentioned, these are the questions that I think you should really focus on when going through your kind of list. So ask about what is your ICU made of? How many patients are you routinely seeing? How much time do you have on that rotation? What complexity do you have? What are your call responsibilities, right? Are you going to be participating in trauma activations? Do you get to do those bedside procedures? Do you get to maybe go into the operating room? And then what electives are built in that are even options for you, right? We work at an ABA burn center, so burns is a huge thing. We have a really high volume cardiac transplant and thoracic transplant thing, so that you might want to do an elective there. So see just what's available to you at these different hospitals. See what research the faculty is doing, the residents, the fellows, what have they published, where are they presenting, and then what other educational opportunities outside of your curriculum. So are they teaching ASSET and ATLS and ADAM, and are they involved in these regional committee meetings, and what do they have built into their own education? And then ask what the day is like. I think a lot of us are still doing virtual interviews, so you may not actually get to see people on service and what their day is, but see what is like, what time is sign out, what time do you leave, when do you interact with people, do you have a Panera, where do you get snacks, is there lounge access? These are important things that make or break your day sometimes. Do you get to go to the activations? Are you going to the operating room? And even if you are doing a 1-year fellowship, many programs have these opportunities built in for you. And again, figure out what type of hospital am I in? Am I at a level 1 trauma center that's in a urban setting? Is it a high penetrating mix, or am I in still a big academic center, but I have a much significant higher blunt trauma mix? Do I have a burn center? Who's operating in this SICU? What kind of research are people doing? Are there affiliated schools that I can collaborate for research, right? And remember, it's only 1 year, so really try to explore where you want to go. It might be an opportunity to try something you've never done before. Check out your faculty. These are the people that are going to be your peers, right? So these are people you're going to learn from, who are going to be your advocate. Are they doing things you want to learn? Are they part of things you want to join? Are they doing research that's interesting to you? And then key is, it's 1 year. You're already looking for a job within a couple months into your fellowship. So can they help you get the job that you want? And then do they have a good time together? I think that's critical. I think people that enjoy each other's company, that are friends and family outside of work, make your experience so much better. And those are the type of colleagues that you want in the future. Where have the fellows gone? After their year at that hospital, are they going to places and have jobs that you would consider going to? I think that's important, right? It shows the connection and the pedigree of that people. I don't put as much into this, but White Coat Investor did talk about this like financial mistake. Is it this big and grim $400,000 mistake? I think you take this with a grain of salt. You can, if you're ready to go, don't take the hit, get started. But if you feel you need that extra education to feel more confident, or to get the job that you want or the career you want, it is not a mistake to do a second year. And then remember, you will never learn everything in fellowship. The 1 year, the 2 year, it doesn't matter. You learn more maybe in that first or second year as an attending than you will probably in your first 7 years of general surgery training. So you're going to learn from your partners, you're going to learn from the residents, you're going to learn from other surgeons. So you'll never feel prepared to enter independent practice, but you're ready, regardless of what fellowship you choose. So is a 1 year thing right for me? You're going to need the additional board certification. It makes you maybe more marketable as a surgeon, builds your skills both clinically and as a leader. If you already have a really solid surgical skills base, 1 year may be the better option for you. And if you really like critical care, but you don't want to be a busy trauma surgeon, this may be a better path for you. And I think if you already have a job going into fellowship, that's great. Then you know what group is going to take care of you when you become that early attending, and you may not need the additional skill set and building that you get as a second year AAST fellow. You'll get that as a junior faculty at your job. So I think there's lots of opportunities. I think there's time for questions at the end. But I think regardless of what you pick, it will be the right pick for you.
Awesome. Dr. Moore and Dr. Patel, thank you both so much for that very rosy overview of all of the different options that our applicants have for us. Dr. Ferrata is going to talk about maybe when things don't go exactly as planned and how to recover or pivot. Dr. Ferrata.
Okay, I was not going to have slides, but now I am. So when we talk about, how to pivot, what to do when plans change. And the first thing is focus on your breathing. Do not despair. Do not go to a place of shame. Do not, because it's not shameful, not too much. Do not go to a plane of isolation, because this is where you're going to need to talk to people and find a different plan and make a different plan. So instead of wasting time with all these feelings, which you're going to have to go through them anyway, use that time to get to a place where you want to get. The odds are in your favor. because unlike surgical residency, where it's really, really hard when you don't match to get the spot, there are multiple unfilled spots. This year we had 51 unfilled spots. So the dynamic changes from being somebody from being you're the one who asking who needs an opportunity, to you having an offer to have plenty of opportunities, or at least from 40 to 50 places to go to. I think in life, this goes for matching and non-matching, or for changing your mind last minute. Everything in life is an opportunity, but we have to have the wisdom to see where the opportunity is. Maybe you get the chance to go to a place that you didn't know it had international rotations, or you didn't know that this person that you knew peripherally now is going to be the mentor that you're going to need for the rest of your career. I honestly believe that both success and failure are imposters, and taking any big decisions in life while you're going through it is not very productive. So surround yourself with people that can give you good advice. Practical advice: go to the SAFA's website and look at all the places where they haven't matched, and talk to the people in your program, the people that wrote you letters. Ask them to go and make phone calls for you. Write emails to the people that are there. This is not the time to be shy. You can be shy later. This is the time to actually take your career under your control, and actually knock as many doors as you can, so you can get where the place where you belong. And again, as I said before, I don't know you know much about me, but I'm a foreign graduate. It took promising my onboard child to get into residency. I did not match. I had to do preliminary, and every the fellowship was different. I had the opportunity to do trauma at Pittsburgh and acute care surgery at Shaw. But that being said, I can tell you that I learned more from the times that I didn't get what I specifically wanted, that when life was easy. I think that life happens when we're busy making plans for it. So it's important, like Dr. Spain said, to be like water, be flexible, and take advantage of every opportunity that you get presented with. Thank you for your time, and I'll take questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ferrada. I will say, if any of the applicants have to pivot and they wind up at Dr. Ferrada's shop where she's a mentor, that is a pivot in the right direction. So I wouldn't call that a pivot. I'd call that a blessing. So with that being said, now we get to focus on some of the current fellows. Now, Dr. Braschi, it's been rumored that you are going to one of the premier trauma shops in the country, dare I say world. I have no bias in that. And then Dr. Golestani, you have phenomenal mentorship at your current spot. So it's of no consequence or surprise that you're both represented on this call. So we'd love to hear your perspective. So Dr. Braschi is a current chief resident. What did you do? How did you pick at this illustrious fellowship? What were some steps? And Dr. Golestani, tell us about your first year in fellowship, what you do differently, and was it as hard or as easy as you thought it would be? So Dr. Braschi, lead us off.
Well, thanks so much for having me on the panel, and I just want to congratulate everybody who's attending today too, because I think you're all making a really great choice. I'm excited for all of us, and I think my experience has been very well described so far by everybody. I kind of followed these recommendations last year, and I decided on trauma and critical care probably in my third clinical year of residency, for exactly the reasons that Dr. Spain's research showed. I love taking care of very sick patients, working on a team. I like the breadth of trauma and critical care. And then when I was deciding about where to apply, what type of fellowship I was interested in, I did, exactly what was described. I really reflected on my training in residency. I am at a county hospital level 1 trauma center that's pretty busy operatively, and we see a pretty good diversity of patients and cases here. I also know that I'm interested in staying in academics, and that's important to me. And I wanted to, have research be a part of my career. And those were the things that I kind of thought about, and having reflected on that going into the application process was helpful, because that's a lot of what comes up during interviews too. People want to know, where you're going and what your goals are, so that they make sure that they can help you get there. And then, having mentorship is so important, as in surgery in general, but especially through the fellowship process, talking to mentors who really know you and figuring out, getting some guidance on whether they think you need to do 1 or 2 years, or how that might be helpful. And I also reached out to recent graduates from our residency who had gone into trauma and critical care, who had done 1-year fellowships and 2-year fellowships, to see what their experience was like, because they knew, what our training is like in residency, and they would be able to kind of guide me specifically based on their experiences. So that was also very helpful to me. And then in terms of preparing the application, it was a flashback a little bit to residency applications, asking for letters of recommendation. My mentors, kind of guided me about who should write letters. And I recommend, leaning on 1 or 2 people to kind of advise you about that. And the application deadline, something that kind of was, I was uncertain about last year. The application opens on a certain day. It's not exactly like residency where you need to submit it on that first day. So I made sure that I felt really good about my personal statement, and that everything, was very ready to submit by the time I actually clicked the button. It wasn't like a first day rush sort of a thing. And then, to me, it was important to apply to a diversity of programs, because I wasn't sure exactly what I was, aiming for. And going through the interview process, seeing what was out there, meeting a bunch of different people, was really helpful in finally kind of narrowing down my list, and just seeing kind of what was out there. And when I finally made my list, or was kind of getting close to the end, I did reach out to programs that I was most interested in to see if I could come visit in person, because we didn't go through Zoom interviews for residency as applicants, and I found it very challenging to get a true sense of places. And so I did go out and visit the places that I was most interested in. And I think everybody's situation is unique. I took into account my goals for training, what I wanted to kind of fill in the gaps of my own training. So, a little bit different types of critical care than we see at my program, research, a little bit more kind of mature research programs. And then, like was mentioned already, I wanted to see the track record of where people got jobs after they graduated from fellowship. And geography, was somewhat important to me and my family as well. And I think those were the, main things for me. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
That was great. Dr. Golestani, thoughts about being a current fellow, what you wish you knew before you knew it?
Thank you. So yeah, I'm currently in my first year of fellowship at Medical College of Wisconsin, and I had the opportunity to be on this panel last year before I had actually started fellowship. So I'm very happy to be here again, having done about 7 months of fellowship. I can say without a doubt that I'm definitely in the perfect fit for me. And I'm really happy to have matched here. So hopefully I can offer a little bit of guidance to everyone who's going through this kind of stressful, but also kind of exciting process. I think the number one thing that is helpful to know before you start is whether you want to do 1 year or 2 year. I won't elaborate because everyone's done such a great job about talking about them already. But I did have one fellowship say that they said in the first year, we'll train you how to become a critical care doctor. We'll train you how to become a trauma surgeon. But in the second year, we'll train you how to become a leader. And that really stuck with me because I think that was kind of hitting on the intangibles that Dr. Moore had talked about is, you know, in that second year, you really have that focused mentorship. And for me, I knew I wanted, you know, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, I wanted to be a leader in the trauma world. And for me, it was definitely worth it to do a second year. And again, you will get so many passionate opinions from your attendings, and it's helpful to take those in, but then kind of figure out what you want to do and what's best for you in your future. So after deciding that, I started interviewing, and kind of like Dr. Spain had said, every single program is so different. It's not like residency where they're all a little bit varied. They are literally like snowflakes. And I started realizing this once I interviewed, and I realized I really needed more insight into what my learning style was, what I wanted to get out of fellowship, and what would be the best fit for me. So I actually made a list. I made a list from 1 through 9 about things that were important to me. So at the top of the list was, excuse me, at the top of the list was 2-year fellowship. So once I did that, then I wanted a place with high levels of penetrating trauma. My residency was excellent, but we just didn't have a lot of that. Austin is not that violent, which is, I guess, a good thing. And then third on my list was being close to family. And I think this is something that's a little bit different from residency. I know in my residency experience, I was just like, someone please take me. I want to match somewhere. But for fellowship, it's really important to find that fit that works for you. So if, you know, being close to family is important to you, it's not only okay to talk about that and have that be on your list, but it's actually really important because I think fellowships also want to know that you're going to be supported and you're going to be in a place where you have the opportunity to grow. So if that's important to you, definitely put that on your list. Second, for me, I know the way that I learn best is to be in an area with structured didactics. So I did one interview at a very amazing place, and I asked the fellows like, oh, what's your didactics program like? And they laughed and said, well, we're Q3 call for 2 years straight. So we kind of learn on the job. And immediately I thought, that's great. That's not for me. If that's, you know, someone on this line thinks that's also great, that's perfect. But it's good to know your learning style so that you can figure out where you would be the best fit. And then just moving on down the list, things like research opportunities, mentorship opportunities, friendly people. Like Caitlin was saying, it's hard that things are Zoom, but you kind of can get a sense for how happy the fellows are and if they feel that they're learning well and if they feel like they fit within the structure of the program. And so definitely try to get a gauge of that. And if you can go out and visit, definitely do so as well. So I think once you've made that list, then you can go through your interviews and I literally gave each program a grade in each of these categories. I like objective data. And so at the end of it, I had a way to kind of gauge which program is best for me. I will say, having done all of that, at the end of the day, I had a gut feeling about MCW. So do that, be objective, know yourself, but also trust your gut because it will very rarely lead you astray. Things I would have done differently. I think if you had asked me immediately after my interviews, I would have said that I applied to way too many programs. I think initially I didn't know if I wanted to do 1 year or 2 year. So I did a lot of interviews and it was exhausting trying to do that on top of being PGY5 and my clinical duties. But looking back, I honestly think that was a really, really great opportunity because the trauma world is really, really small. And so in doing interviews, I had the opportunity to talk to these amazing people who have done these amazing things in the trauma world. And it was really a great introduction because at this point in interviews, they want to get to know you and you have a chance to get to know them. And then, you know, a little while later, you see them at conferences. And so you've built that connection. So I will say, as stressful as it is, try to also enjoy your interviews and do interviews and really talk to the people and get to know them. So I think that is all the advice I have. I will drop my email. So if anyone has any extra questions, I also really love writing. So if anyone wants me to read your personal statement, I would be more than happy to do that. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The Q&A is blowing up, which is awesome. But before we jump into Q&A, I want to do a couple of quick plugs for a couple of resources that are available to everyone. There are so many different ways to get advice. And I think one of the things that I've heard multiple different panelists talk about is reaching out to mentors and letter writers, getting advice from recent grads from your program or people whose careers you want to emulate. There are also, to echo Dr. Golestani's objective data requirement, there are some places to get some objective data. So the first is the SCCPDS Fellowship Directory. You can access this through the website. If you click on that Future Fellows tab, you can view a directory of all of the surgical critical care programs in the country, organized by state, where they train, how many fellows they have, who their program director is, that person's name and email address, as a great sort of way to get a sense of the lay of the land, because there are so many different types of programs and such diversity geographically, size, goals, number of fellows, et cetera. And then also speak to a little bit of some of the things that we've alluded to about whether there's burn experience, whether there's some of these upcoming tracks that are offered through AAST, if those are available, is there a second year available, and some descriptions of that second year. Again, this is all through the SCCPDS website. There's also the Twitter handles, websites, et cetera. There's also a guide to fellowship training, and this is put out by the Surgical Critical Care Program Director Society, again, through that Future Fellows tab. It's a downloadable PDF. You can see here that Dr. Spain was one of the editors, as well with Dr. Chu and some other leaders in the surgical critical care field. And this is a really nice overview of the application process, advice about your personal statement, letters of recommendation, offering some additional resources. So again, a way to sort of get a lay of the land. And then finally, many of the people on this call have participated in writing a updated version of that similar document that was put together through the associate membership, SCCPDS, and EAST. This is a practical guide for navigating surgical fellowship. You can download it through the AAST website. And it has all different kinds of things, from how to mentally, physically, emotionally prepare for fellowship, how to log your cases, how to prep for your boards, how do you navigate fellowship, whether your goal is to be an excellent clinician alone, or whether you want to be a clinician educator or a clinician leader or a clinician scholar, how to find your first job, and sort of everything in between. And again, you can see a lot of familiar names there on that editor list. So those are 3 resources that are available through the internet. But again, I want to echo sort of this idea of getting advice from your mentors and your letter writers. Dr. Spain has his hand raised.
Yeah, I'd say a couple of like random thoughts. So first, I've said this for a long time. If you want to be a great trauma or acute care surgeon, the first thing is you have to be a great general surgeon. That is the most important foundation, right? So when you're 4th year or 5th year resident, there is huge value in doing liver resections with your hepatobiliary surgeons, doing Whipples with portal vein reconstructions with your surgical oncologist, and like operating deep in the pelvis with your colorectal surgeons. Those are all phenomenal experiences. So do not pigeonhole yourself, like, you know, or avoid those cases. They're incredibly valuable if you want to be a great trauma surgeon to do all those cases. So that's one. 2, you know, this idea of like lost income, it's not lost income, it's delayed income, right? And there are implications of that. You may accrue a little bit more interest, and right, it's another year without that. But again, like I said, it's, you just have to work till 68 instead of 67 if you want to, you know, to recoup that money. And then the last thing is like somebody asked a little bit about doing a 1-year experience without a ton of operating. You know, when you finish your fellowship and you go into practice, the group you join, like their mission should be to help you. Like the first 2 years you're in practice, you're in attending fellowship, right? Like your partners, if you join a good group, whether it's private practice or academic, like your senior partner should be watching out for you, should be helping you, you know, shouldn't be letting you get into trouble. I live 3 miles from our hospital. I tell Marla, like junior partners, I'm like, do not get into trouble without calling me. I'll come help you. Like, I may not have the answers, but at least you can share the blame with me, right? If things don't go well. So, you know, there's always solutions to these problems.
Awesome. Dr. Ferrata.
Yeah, I'm so happy I got to be part of this panel and listening to all of you. I have learned tons. I also think you know, it's not the end of the world. Like, let's say you go to a fellowship and it's not perfectly what you wanted. I wouldn't expect that your fellowship is going to make you like perfect and ready to do all the cases all the time. I think that, as Dr. Patel said, the first couple of years of being an attending is a steep learning curve. I also think it's okay to change your mind, right? So it's okay, like a fellowship is not going to define you. You are going to do a fellowship in critical care and you want to do something else, or you are a CT surgeon and you want to do fellowship in critical care. It's okay to change your mind. Life is not a river. You can come back. That's it.
Awesome. So there have been a lot of questions put in the Q&A, and a lot of them have been answered. I think there are some that deserve maybe a little bit of discussion. So a couple of people have asked a variation on the question of, is there utility in looking for either an optional second year or a non-AAST second year experience? Can you change your mind in the middle? Are any of the program directors on the call have strong feelings or passions about that idea of like halfway through your first year being like, just kidding, I want to stay for a second year? Or talking about maybe some of the non-AAST fellowships, although I think Dr. Burlew and Dr. Savage have been like trying to claw away at them and make them all AAST, but I don't want to speak for the AAST. Did I ruin it by putting in a little joke there at the end? Or
I will say, like, sorry. So, I mean, I've been involved with this for a while, and you know, initially the fellowships were super structured, right? The AAST fellowships were super structured, and I think that kept a lot of programs from pursuing it because it just sort of felt a little limiting. And I think now over the last couple of years, they've started to allow a lot more sort of flexibility in those programs. So I think a lot of the people, including us, we're now looking into it and trying to get our ducks in a row. I think a lot of programs now that there's that extra flexibility are starting to pursue those getting formal approval now. But I think I don't know about the other people, but like when we look at fellows, like we don't judge them if they're applying to 1 and 2 year programs, right? Like you know, I think most of us are more interested in trying to help you figure out where your home is, right? And so if you know, if you're going to be much better off going to another program than ours because it's a better fit for your needs, then great. Like, look, how can I help you get there? Like, you know, I think in the past a lot of fellowships were guilty of eating their young, and I don't think we do that anymore. I really think we're trying to help everybody get to the best place for them. So
awesome.
I agree with Dr. Spain. I think that also, as I said before, it's okay to change your mind. If you change your mind and you want to do a 2-year fellowship, maybe you stay there, maybe you go somewhere else. That's okay. I mean, there's no real rule book. And I love that I think the theme of where we're talking about is like, know yourself, right? Where you're adults right now. It's okay to choose. I know that in medicine, you're like a delayed adulthood because you have been in the match and you're used to people telling you what to do. But this is the end of that. You have to drive your own life. How do you want your career to look? And if you don't do that for yourself, you can have all the mentors you want, but nobody's going to be able to decide what's best for you than yourself.
Awesome. Thank you both. A number of folks in the chat have been asking a little bit more clarification about the timeline. So maybe without revealing any state secrets, maybe Dr. Moore or Dr. Patel, can you share like when your committees are looking at applications? Are your interview invites rolling? Do you release them all at the same time? If I don't submit everything until April 1st, am I up a creek? I'll never get to the University of New Mexico or back to Chicago.
Dr. Schwed, we'd love to have you at the University of New Mexico. We generally start looking at applications. SAFIS opens March 1st. We generally don't start looking at applications. There's usually a whole rush of them on March 1st, and then they keep trickling in over very long time. We start looking April to May-ish and develop a list of our people that we're going to offer interviews to, and then usually send that out kind of end of May. given that it's a large application field and the interview season is quite long, there's often some rolling interview invites that go out as people kind of figure out more about what they're interested in. Like Dr. Golestani mentioned, you really find out a lot about yourself after you've done a couple interviews and kind of figure out what's out there. And I think people figure out what programs are better suited for them. And then we have some cancellations towards the end of the season. So there are some rolling interview offers that go out throughout the summer.
Yeah, same. I would always recommend letter writers, especially acute care trauma surgeons, are sometimes unpredictably busy. So I would definitely be making appointments to sit down with your attending, share your CV, share your ideas, and ask for those letters now. I like to always set, put an early deadline, and then if they miss it, keep encouraging them to keep at it. I do think March 1st is a great deadline to aim for. It is nice to be in that first group, but we all understand life happens. So I think a realistic is April 1st. I think most of us start looking into April to start getting our first batch, at least, of interview invites. And we've realized it's just easier maybe getting, especially as a 1-year program, a lot of the 2 years always fill. The 1 years, I think we as a fellowship group are have to be a little bit more aggressive of making sure we have enough applicants and we get the interviews. So I tend to interview on the earlier side, just to let people know how awesome we are and keep us in mind as you go out through your season.
Awesome.
Dr. Bertel, you mentioned that 1 year and kind of the 1 year, 2 year. There was a question in here. I'd be remiss to ignore it as the military guy on the panel. So there's a question about the military. So for those military, just to answer this question, the military is a unique situation where you can do a 2-year fellowship or a 1-year fellowship, but still have the protection of a 2-year time commitment. So with that being said, you can do the formalized AAST 2-year program. You can do a non-formalized 2-year program, or you can do a 1-year program and use that second year for whatever you may be. So I actually interviewed in some of the interview spots. I looked at a 1-year program, and in that second year, I actually considered doing a different fellowship in MIS or thoracic or something like that. That actually can come in. So from the military's perspective, you have complete flexibility. I have friends across the military community who have done the AAST sponsored second year like I did, and I have friends who have done a 1-year program and their second year was very flexible. Whether that was in education, whether that was in research, whether that was just an opportunity to have that bumper bowling attending hood. So it is actually a very unique situation that the military prescribes. And from the military's perspective, they do not care. They will get a 2-year time commitment for whatever fellowship you do. So that second year should be really personalized in what you want to do. But for those applicants, and this has come up in the question, we haven't really discussed this from the program directors. What are you looking for? We've talked about how to get there, but once that application hits your desk, what are you looking for? What should my CV say? What should my letters of recommendation say? What gets me to Stanford versus New Mexico? How do I go about that? Who's your ideal candidate?
I just want to say, sorry, one thing, Josh, about that military applicant, especially if you're looking at a 1-year fellowship, as a program director, it's a great opportunity for us because you're funded. And so from our standpoint, we don't have to worry about getting funding for that second year. So most 1-year programs should be open to looking at your application, but then you should really nail down on what they're going to offer you for that second year. And are they really going to be able to get you what you want? If you want to do more vascular rotations and they don't have a fellowship, it might be a great opportunity for you to collaborate with them. But if you are a military person having 2-year funding, you can still apply to those 1-year programs, but then really ask those program directors to, provide commitments and, give them an example of what your second year would be.
Now that we've got you on the hook, what are you looking for in your applicants? You're screening those applications early. You want to spread the word about how great your shop is. How do applicants stand out to you?
Yeah, I think, anyone who I read the personal statements, I think a story is always interesting. And I also think the letters of recommendation from people that we know in the community or an email, people we respect, if they speak highly of you, they talk about your dedication to patient care, your energy, your engagement, your inquisitive nature, you're willing to work as a team. To me, that is like above all else. Doesn't matter what your scores are, doesn't matter anything. Like those are the people I want to work with every day. Like, who do you want to take call on a Friday night with? Who do you want to suffer post-call rounds with? Those are the people that you want as a fellow. And that's what I look for. Who do you want as a colleague in the future?
Dr. Moore, Dr. Ferrata?
Totally agree. I think when I read the application, is this somebody that I'm going to want to be across from the OR table or in the trauma bay with at 2 a.m.? Is this somebody who, has the grit and dedication to really stick with the fellowship program? And is this somebody who's coming with the background from general surgery that they would fit well within the specifics of New Mexico?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that personal statements are important for us. Letters of recommendation are important. I think the most important for me personally is the interview and the energy level, whether it's the interview via Zoom, even through Zoom, you can see if somebody is really interested in going. I think interest is for me number one.
Yeah, I like that. Like we look for like evidence in your application of sort of a sustained commitment, right? Like is there something they really want to do, right? And what's the evidence that they're committed to this career path?
So speaking of those interviews, we've had this question come up a couple of times. Zoom interviews, in-person interviews, a combination. The applicants are asking what should they expect, and nationwide, how many are still doing in-person interviews in the global age of Zoom?
So Zoom is cheaper for everybody involved. But I actually think that you can get a gist of what the program is about to Zoom. I think nobody's gonna tell you, if you're really interested in going and learning more about the program, nobody's gonna deny you in-person visit. So I think as an applicant, I will use Zoom to screen as many programs as you can. Since you don't have to pay for the travel. And then those that you're really, really interested, like let's say you need to have, I agree with, I don't remember who said about the gut feeling, but I think that, yes, we take decisions rationally, but really before we even think about the decision is already taken by emotion, right? So you need to go there, and if you need to go there and feel the environment, then nobody's going to say no to an in-person interview.
Yeah, I think Zoom's easier when you're a PGY5, right? Like you're way more sophisticated than an MS4, right? You can figure it out. You can get a hold of somebody there. Like, so I think Zoom interviews for fellowships is okay. I think it's much more challenging for poor medical students to figure out where they're going to spend the next 5 to 7 years of their life.
I agree. And the stakes are a little bit lower given that this is a 1 to 2 year commitment versus a 5 to 7 year commitment. And the stakes are also higher. If you go on, I don't know, 10, 15 interviews, however many interviews you're doing, that's a significant amount of time that you're losing as a chief resident. And it's so expensive. I think I spent $10,000 interviewing for fellowship and went to 15 places and missed out on a lot of great cases. And I think I would have preferred Zoom ultimately as a chief resident.
I did end up getting
Caitlin.
the status though, but I agree. It was an expensive and exhausting endeavor. I'm wondering if the current trainees, we sort of asked you guys to sort of talk about your process and talk about your timeline. And maybe this is more a question for Samin than for Caitlin, but I'm wondering, like, you are, Caitlin, you're 6 months, not even, you're 4.5 months away, 5 months away from starting your fellowship. And Samin, you're halfway through. What should trainees think about for post-match pre-fellowship? What are the goals? Is it to just be a chief resident? Are there certain things to be thinking about or have on your radar? Or is it just like, forget it, like it's already taken care of, don't worry about it, August will happen when August happens?
I think once you match, first just take a week and just breathe a sigh of relief. I think that's important. And I think we don't take breaks as surgical trainees. But then I think the rest of that year, like Dr. Moore was mentioning and Dr. Span was mentioning, just operate. So we would scrub into our co-residence cases just for fun. Like if I wasn't on vascular, but I saw aorta bifem, I would go in and try to do the other limb. And so just really enjoy the last months of residency, because it's also, I mean, we had a very, very close residency, and it's kind of weird to think that you're never going to have that again. And as stressful as it is, but it's just a really, really great time in your life that you're never going to get back. So operate as much as you can. Boards are coming up, so try to study as well. Yeah, so that's what I would say. I would say that you can't really prepare for fellowship, so just work on really, really being a great general surgeon. And every case that I would go into, I would try to think, what would I do if I was by myself? And I had co-residents who were going to be going into the military or who were going into community, and that's what they had to think. They had to think, this is my last time that I'll be in training, so how do I do this by myself? And so if you go into that mindset, even though you know you're going to do a fellowship, I think that was really important because it makes you think about the case differently, and you makes you think, oh, like what suture do I want? What specifics would I need? And that's great. And just really enjoy your time. You put a lot of hard work into getting into residency, into getting into fellowship, and just try to enjoy it. And this is like an off, but I will say that when you finish residency before you start fellowship, you don't get paid for that month, and you have to travel and start fresh. So if you can save for that, I wish someone had told me this before, because that part's stressful.
Two things. As a general surgery program
Yes, sir.
director, like if you're a PGY4, I strongly encourage you to take your general surgery written boards this July at the start of your PGY5. Then that month between the end of your residency and the beginning of your fellowship, you don't have anything you have to do except for move, right? Which is a big deal. But if you're ready, again, you can go on the American Board of Surgery website and look at your PGY4 AB site and look at your 3-digit score and figure out like what are the odds you're going to pass your written exam. And if it looks pretty good, I would take it at this July if you're a PGY4. The other thing is, that month, right? You don't have any income. Do not buy your Cobra tail, right? Because it's hugely expensive, and you can buy it retrospectively. So if nothing happens in that month, you're okay. But if something happens, you can then buy it, and you're covered retroactively back to the start of the month. So don't buy it unless something is happening. So.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Spain, because I didn't do that, and I thought I was making a huge mistake of my life. So to hear you say don't do that is very validating.
Yeah, you
Thank
can buy it like retroactively up to 60 days after you leave your employment, and it starts back on the day you left your employment. So if you get in a car crash, you can buy it tomorrow and it covers you back. So
I think that the general surgery board written is a huge strategy. I know I did that, and it saved a ton of stress. And I know we haven't really talked about that a lot. So, and remind me, so for those on the call who don't know what that process is, they don't have to have every case number, right? They just have to have the chief cases, the TA cases, and feel adequately prepared to pass their boards. So if I'm missing one pancreas case, that's okay. I just have to have the chief case, the TA case, and feel comfortable. Is that correct?
No, you just have to be a PGY4. Originally, you had to have the case numbers, but then that just precluded so many people. So now pretty much there's a few things you have to have, but you don't have to have your chief cases.
Great. So it's even easier. So thank you for bringing up that point, because that had been overlooked. Yeah. Another point, and we're running out of time, but the questions are coming in, so thank you so much. So I don't think we've hit on this. So Dr. Moore, you mentioned you've got a 1-year spot and a 2-year spot. I'm not sure which one I want. Can I apply to both? And if I do, is that look positively, negatively, or does that matter at all?
I would say that puts you in the majority of applicants. We had a handful of people who knew they wanted 1-year spots coming into interviews, a handful of people who knew they only wanted 2-year spots, but the vast majority said both. We asked them about it during interviews, and some people, after their applications have been submitted, have a bit of an idea of, I really strongly want a 2-year program, but I'd be willing to consider a 1-year program. And then we resurvey people right before developing rank lists and ask. And it's perfectly legitimate too if you just really want to be at a certain institution. If it matters more to you that you want to do your fellowship at MCW and you care less about 1 versus 2, that you just really want to be there and you'll take whatever you can get to be there, that's okay. And relatively normal. Is it really nice to have somebody who knows what they want and has like a clear cut goal of like, I really want to do this because this is my ultimate goal and this is why? Yeah, that's really nice. But I would say the majority of people don't have quite as clear cut of an answer to that.
Awesome. There are a couple of questions in the chat that are sort of nuts and bolts questions. One of which is like, can you assign certain letters to certain programs? And one of them is For the optional documentation, do I have to put something there? I'm not a program director in surgical critical care. I don't want to say the wrong answer. My mother growing up said nothing is optional. But if any of the program directors on the line have a better answer than Denise Schwed, that'd be great. So that
I think
just
Denise is right.
she'll be happy
No,
to hear that.
I think optional, I can't think of anything that you would have to put in that area. And honestly, from a program director, I don't know about the inner workings. I don't remember about the assignments. It's been a while since I applied. Maybe one of the
One of the
recent graduates.
trainees, Dr.
Yeah.
Golestani or Dr. Brashi. Same letters for every program. Choose
I
your
don't
adventure.
remember about the letters because I use the same for all the programs, but I'm pretty sure I didn't put anything in the optional documents section. Can't think of anything.
I will say that the SAFAS website is not a good website. It is very clunky. And so you think that you've done something wrong, but you haven't. So you have to send all your letters to everyone. I don't think it's that fancy.
I just I'm sorry to say this, but I sense like there's so much tension. Like really, if you have good letters, it doesn't matter which 3 letters go anywhere. It's gonna be okay. Like as I said before, like you guys, I think stand in your own power. As applicants to surgical critical care, the ball is in your corner. Don't be intimidated. You're gonna match, and if you don't match, you're gonna have 50 places to pick where to go. It's okay.
Yeah, to echo that, I think this is very different from residency applications. Like we are courting you. We want you to come to our place way more than you probably want to come to our place. So really, you are the people in power, and we should be trying to work very hard to impress you and really want you to come to our program.
This is a total mindset change, right? Dr. Patel's right. Like, right? You're an undergrad and you're like begging some medical school, please, please, please let me in. And then you're like a medical student and you're begging some residency, like, please, please match me. And this is like, you really are way more in the driver's seat in this process than you realize.
Yeah, personally, I don't want to speak for everyone. I thought the fellowship interviews were that exact issue. I thought they were much less stressful than anything in med school and residency. I enjoyed them. Now, obviously, I was in that Zoom COVID area, so I didn't have to spend all that money like Dr. Moore did, and I wouldn't have been able to anyway. Well, this has been a phenomenal panel, and we expected nothing less than that. Once again, our panel has just hit it out of the park. Thank you so much for just leaders in the field, program directors, future fellows, current fellows. We've had a wonderful discussion, and the questions were phenomenal, right on point. I think we did our best to answer most of you could. Our email should have gone out in the chat. And if not, you can reach out to WST and get all of our contact. We'd love to answer some of those either nitty gritty, or if you have, certain questions, you have program directors right here in front, taking advantage of it. I wish I had. With that being said, thank you so much. Dr. Schwed's going to give a shout out for some future webinars coming out that we don't want to miss. So what are those? And then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Josh was saying. Thank you all for being on the panel. Thank you to the attendees for all the great questions. Please do reach out via email. I hope what you're seeing is not only are there a lot of friendly faces, and I want to triple echo the it all works out. This is a great field. You should definitely do it. Everybody on this call is more than willing to respond to a text, respond to an email, or reach out. Our next upcoming AAST Grand Rounds is on March 20th. It is sponsored by the Geriatric Trauma and Acute Care Surgery Committees, and it's called What's Old is Young, the Next Generation of Geriatric TQIP Guidelines. And then on March 27th, the associate membership is co-sponsoring a talk about healthcare economics with the Acute Care Surgery Committee and the AAST associate membership. So be on the lookout for information for those. On behalf of Dr. Dilday and myself, and Dr. Dillon got to join us late. She got stuck in the operating room. Thank you all so much to our panelists. Thank you to our attendees. Everybody have a good night. Thank you.